Good morning. Thanks for joining me. So today we are looking at 1.2 scattergrams. Yesterday we also did the same section, but it was just learning how to plot the ordered pairs. Now they're just going to put a little bit of a story behind it. Okay, so it's really only two problems today. It shouldn't be too bad. This handout is available in the Canvas modules. It's a big packet. It's something like, I think it's like 40 something pages, and it sounds kind of scary, but it's almost all of the handouts for the rest of the quarter. Okay, so it's almost all the notes that we'll need. If you don't have access to a printer, I would definitely suggest getting some graph paper. Okay, so the purpose of this handout, in previous handouts, it was convenient so that we didn't have to waste class time jotting down the problems. In the case of this one, the reason why I created the packet is for the heavy graphing days, because students wouldn't always be bringing graph paper. Okay, so that's what we've got going on here. So let's go and take a look. We have 3 steps here. So step number 1, it says to look at your table of data and determine the independent variable, remember that's your input, and dependent variable, your output. So those are the X's and the Y's that we talked about yesterday. In this textbook, they do not try to trick you with the table. In previous textbooks that we've had, they would place the Y in the first column of a table and the X in the second one. This one does not do that. When they give you a table, the first column, the X is your independent, and then the second column, your Y is the dependent. Okay, so number 2, the independent variable will be represented on your horizontal. So you can think like the horizon, like the sunrise, sunset. So that's the one going across the bottom. So that's your X. And the dependent is that vertical axis. That's your Y. And finally, step number 3, it's just kind of a brief summary of all those math department graphing guidelines, which again, you can find those in the syllabus. And so just to summarize, if a graph is not provided, use graph paper to draw straight axes with your straight edge. Before you start plotting your ordered pairs, label your axes with the appropriate letters and with the meaning and units. Okay, so we'll do all this today. We'll do two big problems and clearly indicate your scale. If it's an application problem, which is a fancy word for story problem, give it a title. As you plot your data, be polite and label your ordered pairs. Okay. So we will do all of this when we practice today. This very first problem, this is going to look kind of weird. It's about this takeout food problem, and then there's no data. The reason why this one is in here is if we were in class, we would do an extra like little homework problem based on this one, and then I was just providing the graph paper. So just skip that one. We aren't going to worry about it. Here's the first one that we're going to do. So problem number 1. Says the number of pages in each of the books in the Harry Potter series is listed in the following table. Let P be the number of pages and B be the corresponding book number. Okay, and then they give us this little table off to the side, book numbers 1 through 7, number of pages, we've got there in the second column. So before we even start to look at the data, let's just take care of all of those guidelines that we need to do, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is give it a title. You can put anything you want. I'm just going to write Harry Potter. Okay, and since these are the graphing guidelines by the department, if you don't put a title, I do have to take off points, okay? I also need to see your axes labeled. So that is what you're going to write across the bottom. So what do you think we should write? So what's our independent? Remember I said that first column is always the independent, okay? So that's the book number. So we're going to write book number across the bottom. And did they tell us what letter they wanted us to use? Let's look. They said let B be the book number. So I'm going to put a little b right here. And then off to the side, up the vertical axis is going to be the number of pages. So I'm going to write that in. And the little letter that they wanted us to use was P for pages. All right, so we have our title. We've labeled our axes with the letter and with the title of the axes. Okay, so the book number, the number of pages. Let's put in some numbers. How high do the book numbers go? Looks like to 7. If I went to 7, let's see, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be like here. that's not really utilizing all my graph space. If you like that, if you want it squeezed in all tight, that's totally fine. If you want to do that, I'm going to space mine out just so it looks nice and big and pretty and easy to look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip every other one because I think it'll fit. Okay, so I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm just going to go every other one just to kind of blow it up, make it nice and easy to read. And up the side, what is the highest number that you see in the table? Looks like probably that 870. So we need to think about going up the side. How do we want to label that? Okay, so, and it's just personal preference. I kind of played around with it for a little while, and I found that to kind of maximize my space, I found that if I went by 50 up the side, that I could squeeze it all in, but it looked really crowded to me seeing it count by 50 up every single line. So I went ahead and I just skipped every other one and went by 100. So each one of these is 50, but I'm only labeling every other one just to try to make it easier to read. All right, so it all fit on there. And so notice that the scale, it stays the same. Before I've had students that up the side, they just put in only the data points and then it's not spaced evenly. So I hope that you can see this is nice and spaced evenly. So it went up by the 100s every other line and then across the bottom every other line by the book number. So for example, I've had people in the past, their scattergram on the left side, they might tell me something like, well, I'll show you what they would do. I've had people before, they write like 309 and then 341. They write it like this. So that's incorrect because that's not going to be an even scale up the side. Okay. So we have everything, right? We have our title, our axes, the numbers. So now all that's left is just to plot those ordered pairs. So I'll do the first one with you and then ask you to finish it off. So the first one is 309. So I go to 1 on the bottom, 309. Remember, each line is 50. So I'm going to go about here. Seems like a pretty good estimate. And then don't forget to label. So I'm going to put 1, 309. And then the parentheses. Make sure you put the parentheses or else it's not an ordered pair. Okay, so we have the 1, 309. Now go ahead and plot the rest of those. I'm going to do it at the same time. I'm not going to say it out loud. So if I end up going too fast, just hit pause. Okay, so try to go ahead and plot those ordered pairs and then we'll see how it goes. And after you're done with that, you can even do parts B and C. Okay, so give this whole page a try. All right, so if you aren't quite done, just hit pause and go ahead and finish it off. If you are done, go ahead and take a look and make sure that we got the same thing. It's really tempting for people to connect the dots. We are not playing connect the dots, okay? So it's just a scattergram. It's just ordered pairs. So this is the answer for part A. Awesome. So if you didn't get a chance to try part B and part C, go ahead and do that now. If you got it, though, let's go ahead and check. So for part B, it says, which book has the greatest number of pages? So you could find that out two different ways. You could look in your chart and look for the highest number and see which book that is. Or you could look on your graph and see which one is up the highest. So what do you think? I'm sure that you got it. Book number 5 has the highest with that 870 pages. Okay, so we'll put in 5. And now part C, it's a little bit tricky sometimes. From which book to the next did the number of pages increase the most? Explain how you can tell this by inspecting your scattergram. So between which books did it increase the most? So let me change colors here. So you can see like from book 1 to 2, hardly any change, right? A little bit of a bigger change there from 2 to 3. Which one looks like the biggest though? That 3 to 4. Okay, so that change from 3 to 4, look at that. That is a big jump, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write in from 3 to 4. What was that biggest change? From 3 to 4. And what I'm going to write is has the biggest. I'm going to put vertical because it was that up and down. Has the biggest vertical change. All right, cool. Let's do one more. Problem number 2 is about golf. We have Tiger Woods golf tournament earnings and the number of wins are shown in the following table. So this one looks kind of weird because it has the 3 different columns. For this first part, only worry about the first 2 columns. That third column with the wins, that comes in later. There's a question at the bottom about the wins. Okay, so as far as the graphing, only worry about the first 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do, I always put the title first because if I don't, I'm going to forget. Okay, so I'm just going to write Tiger Woods. You can put whatever you would like for the title. And across the bottom is we're looking at years. So in part A, it says let E be Tiger Woods tournament earnings in millions of dollars in the year that is T years since 2000. For example, T equals 0 represents 2000 and T equals 6 represents 2006. Okay, so we've got our title. Across the bottom, I'm going to write years. I'm going to write since 2000. And then that was what letter? T years. So we'll put a little T. Off the side, we have our earnings in millions of dollars. Oh, jumped ahead. Well, it really jumped ahead. All right, so our earnings. In millions of dollars. And they want us to use capital E. Okay, and let's look going up the side. The tournament earnings, millions of dollars. So it starts pretty low. I mean, the lowest one is low at 0.7. And the highest one I'm seeing, I think, is at 10.9. I'm not going to do anything fancy here. I'm just going to count by ones, but I'm just going to label every other one just because if I have too many numbers, it starts to look confusing to me. So I'm counting by ones, but only labeling every other one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And once I get to 12, that's enough. Now across the bottom, I'm going to show you something. If you don't like this, don't worry about it. It's called a break. And what that means is our years, they're since 2000. But if you notice in the chart, the data doesn't even start until 2006. So if you want, you can put in, it just looks like a little squiggly. He just goes up, down, back up. And he can only happen right at the axis. And essentially what he's doing is he's taking this axis and just kind of pulling it in and bunching it up so that we can skip the 0 through 5, meaning that we can start our data here with a 6. Okay, so that just means that we skipped. You can only do that right at the origin. And again, if you don't like it, totally cool. Don't worry about it. Just list off all of your numbers. Okay, so you would have 1 through 6 first before you start your actual data. All right, and why did I pick 6? Because it was 2006 and it's years since 2000. Sometimes I have students write in 2006 right there, but that is incorrect. Let me show you. I'm going to actually write it and then I'll erase it. if you put 2006 right here, remember that we said this was years since 2000. So when you write 2006, that means 2006 years since 2000. Okay, so we do not want that. We want 6 years since 2000 because we're talking about the year 2006. Okay, so I bet that's 6. And I'm going to have to go up to, it looks like 11. I'll just go ahead and go up to 12 just to go ahead and get it all in there. And again, for my spacing, I have plenty of space, so I'm going to go every other one. So I'm going to go 6, and then skip 1, go 7, all the way up to 12. All right, so we have our title, we labeled our axes, we've got our numbers in there. Go ahead and plot those ordered pairs. Remember, only worry about the first 2 lines, the first 2 columns, and then go ahead and try to finish off the page. So try to answer those bottom 2 questions. Okay, so go ahead and hit pause and give it a try. I'll go ahead and quietly work through it while you're working through it. All right, so there are all the ordered pairs. If you haven't had a chance to do it, just hit pause. Hopefully everything looks good. Just remember that when you're labeling it, that again, we put like the 6, 7, 8. We didn't put in the ordered pairs. We didn't label it with the years because it is years since 2000, okay? And don't forget those parentheses. And we are done with that. So if you did not get a chance to try these 2 questions here at the bottom, go ahead and hit pause. For part B, it says, for which of the years shown in the table were his tournament earnings the least? What were those earnings? And for which of those years were his earnings the greatest? And what were those earnings? And so sometimes students read these questions and the earnings, they might pick the 2 lowest and the 2 highest because they see the plural. That's totally fine. I would accept that answer. Or if you just picked just the lowest and the highest, I would also accept that answer. Okay, so it's just kind of an awkwardly worded question. So I'd give you the benefit of the doubt, and I would take either way that you interpreted that. Okay, so the lowest, I think that looks like the year 2011, right? So 2011, and what was it? It looks like that was the $0.7 million. And then the greatest one looks like it was in 2007 at $10.9 million. For part C, it says, for the year shown in the table, did he have his greatest tournament earnings in the same year as his greatest number of wins? Give 2 reasons why this is possible. So before we worry about the reasons, let's go look and see, did he have the greatest tournament earnings the same year as his greatest number of wins? So let's go look. So his greatest, this is where that 3rd column is coming into play. So he made, look at this, he made 10.9 here, but was that the greatest number of wins? It was not, because he actually made more here. So he had more wins here, but made less money. Okay, so it's not corresponding that the number of earnings are based on the number of wins. And then they ask 2 reasons why this might be possible. And this in the classroom is where most of us look around the room and we rely on the folks that knew about golf, because I am not one of them. So I always depend on you guys to help me make a list. And there's so many reasons and they're all awesome. The two most popular ones that I hear all the time, because honestly, I can't remember all the other reasons right now, that I hear students tell me that there are different stakes tournaments. Okay, so we're at higher stakes tournaments. So what that means is that like one tournament that the prize might be like $1 million, and a different tournament it might only be like $500,000 is the biggest prize. And so even though like you could like win a bunch of the lower stakes tournaments to have more wins and then have less money, or you could win fewer of the higher stakes and have a lot of money. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that's one way that students have explained to me. That's one of them. Another one that students tell me is that you have like sponsors. And my understanding, I don't know this exactly. My understanding is it's kind of like the race cars. Have you seen the race cars? Then they have like these different sponsors. I think it's kind of like that the golf people, they had different sponsors. So they might, like I think there was, see where he had like 0 wins, but he still got money. So those are probably from his sponsors. So whoever was supporting him probably gave him money just to make an appearance, to show up and to play that tournament. That's my understanding. Okay, so I'm sure you know more than me about golf. Okay, so that wraps up today. If you look on the next page, if you didn't have a chance to grab graph paper and you need some, I do have that page in here. So make sure that you're doing your work on graph paper, okay? So I think that wraps up today. I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day. Good job today.